Welcome to Leadership Talk, the official Waymaker podcast, where we explore how your organization can achieve more by doing less. Welcome to Leadership Talk, the official Waymaker podcast. My name is Craig, and with me, as usual, on the sunny Gold Coast is Stuart Leo, CEO and founder of Waymaker. How are you, mate?
Fantastic. How are you?
That's good. Well, it's the very last day of winter, which I'm stoked about because winter has kind of semi-sucked.
It's kind of sucked for all the southern states in Australia.
It has, yeah.
You've been in lockdowns.
As opposed to you,
I know.
Who was out and about in your jet ski on the weekend, I saw on social media.
The great beached whale was on the jet ski and with the kids having a ball of a time in 24, 25 degree Celsius, blue skies, water's warmish, and it's just God's promised land around here.
It helps to live just south of the Tropic of Capricorn.
Yeah, that's right. It was actually so nice to actually get sunshine, warmth, salt air. It makes you feel alive. It's great. Yeah.
There's no segue I can really jump on here, Stu, but I'm going to just take us straight into this episode.
That's probably a good idea.
With the last few episodes we've been talking about employee experience, and we're going to start to dive into customer experience in this episode.
That's right. We're working kind of in reverse around the 7 questions on Waymaker's growth framework, the leadership curve, and those 7 questions. If we go in correct order, from vision to market to, I'm not giving the exact questions, you can jump on and look at those, vision to market to strategy to business model to customer experience to employee experience to what actions or goals shift the needle on the business. And so you're right, 4 or 5 episodes ago we talked about goals, we talked about leading and lagging metrics, we talked about good goal setting and how goals create alignment. Question 7 is the most important question, which is what 1, 2 or 3 things that if delivered in the next quarter or half are going to shift the needle on the business. And that really sharpens your focus on, across the business or the organisation, and we put that system of organisation into 6 interconnected buckets or slices of the pie, so to speak, being employee experience, customer experience, the business model, strategy, market, and vision. And employee experience is all about how do we acquire, retain, and grow the right talent. Customer experience, which we're talking about today, is all about how do we acquire, retain, and grow customers.
Yep.
The business model is all about how do we create commercial value and build value out of pulling the parts together, and specifically what practices and key metrics do we use. And strategy is all about how do we find our competitive advantage and position in market. And market is all about, well, what is our market? Who's our ideal customer and what do they value? And vision is all about purpose. What problem do we solve? Therefore, what purpose do we have? And how does that achieving that purpose daily reach us towards our ultimate vision? So at the end of the day, we want to help leaders shift their teams into the right behaviours to get from here to there, whatever there is for your organisation. And we believe that some of the old practices of the 20th century are no longer relevant for the 21st century, and that we need to think differently. We need to think more deeply, but we need to be able to think more quickly whilst thinking more deeply. And the 7 questions actually help you do that. And the 7 questions are baked into the diagnostic and algorithms of Waymaker. So we're one of the first, if not the first, strategic management platform in the world that has baked the thinking model deep into the algorithms and programmatic work that sits inside the tech, bringing skills and systems together, which is what the Waymaker leadership curve is all about. And today, That was a really long way to get to today. We're all about customer experience.
I was actually going to say, well, how does CX fit into that leadership curve and that framework? But you've pretty much kind of summarized.
Well, yeah, I think so. And see, getting from A to B or A to Z, from here to there, getting your organisation up that curve, is all about identifying what are the best practice activities. And our leadership curves, there's actually 8 of them sitting behind that master curve, identifies all the best practice skills and systems. And when you take the diagnostic, it measures your organisation on those. So you can actually go, oh, wow, they're the things I should do first. How does CX fit into the bucket? Well, it's our belief from research and observation across business for the last 5 or 10 years that there's 6 things that you've got to kind of keep in balance as you get that organisation growing and scaling up the curve. Yep. Those 6 things being vision, market strategy, business model, CX and EX. But the thing that keeps them in balance is forward movement. You've got to have forward movement, and forward movement comes from action, which comes from goals. So the 7th thing is the thing that turns good ideas into results, which is action, goals. So every organisation will at some point be attacking this area of customer experience and trying to find fit by going, how do we systematically and repeatedly acquire, retain and grow customers? How do we improve that? And because all organisations are not closed systems, they're open systems, i.e. things that happen around you and inside you affect you as an organisation, then life can change by stuff that happens on the inside, and life can change by stuff that happens on the outside. Outside being customers, market, technology, politics, governance. So keeping these 6 areas of the business in a state, and I think in the past we've talked about in the body, your body keeps the systems in alignment through this thing called homeostasis. It's the way the body stays healthy. Keeping your organisation healthy is about keeping these 6 systems in alignment and healthy. And customer experience is, I'm not going to say one of the most important because they're all important, but probably one of the biggest and deepest areas. It's not all parts are as deep as each other, but all, when not right, throw the organisation off kilter, make you sick. And so customer experience is that part, that system within the system of the organisation that is very deep, and it actually covers sales and marketing and service. It's quite a deep area.
Well, you mentioned sales and marketing, and normally like the whole idea of acquiring, retaining and growing customers is like the domain traditionally of sales and marketing. So why customer experience?
Yeah, good question. So let's put the Waymaker definition to this. Customer experience is the unification of sales, marketing and service on technology in order to create inspirational branded moments across the customer journey. So that's quite a big definition. So it's the unification of sales, marketing and service, those disciplines, on a technology platform to create inspirational branded moments across the customer journey. So the big idea here is how do we create a journey for our customers that's inspirational, valuable, that draws them through a discovery, consideration, purchase process, but also into a retention and a growth journey to stay with you. And so customer experience is how we use those disciplines of sales, marketing and service to do that. And so that's different. That's technology has shifted the landscape over the last 10 years for every organisation on this. And so that thinking around customer experience, it's the culmination. It's that synergistic outcome of sales, marketing and service on technology, creating something bigger. And that's what we call customer experience. It's all about acquiring, retaining and growing customers. So if we think about customer experience in that light, we've got to think about not working as departments in silos, but working as a product team or a service team or or a team with the skills of sales and marketing and service in order to draw that customer through a journey. And because the customer journey has changed so dramatically over the last 5 to 15 years, we have to bring in elements of digital, elements of technology, and we have to understand the journey as a distinct journey. That's the big shift. And so I think it was Peter Drucker, and we love Drucker because he's the godfather of modern business, and he had this famous quote around marketing innovation. And I'll read this because it's so good. Mm-hmm. Because the purpose of business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. Peter Drucker. And I remember reading that 20, 25 years ago and being so inspired as a young marketer, business person in grad school, learning these early skills, going, wow, that's amazing. And I think today, if he was to say that, he wouldn't say marketing innovation. He would probably say customer experience and innovation. And the reason for that is because the term marketing, since the 60s, 70s, whenever he said that or wrote those words, has become so bastardized to mean advertising and promotions that marketing no longer means marketing. In Drucker's day, marketing meant how do you acquire, retain, grow customers using the skills of selling, communications, service, advertising, promotions, distribution, the classic 4 Ps of marketing. And that's where we need to think about customer experience. And it's really marketing 2.0 or 3.0, if you want to call it like that. Yep. So I think when we say customer experience, old school marketers go, hey, that's just marketing. New school marketers go, oh, wow, this new science of customer experience. Not really. It's kind of just the same thing repackaged, but with a lot more technology. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, and that's the bit that you highlight in your definition. It's the technology element and how the technology is used to engage the customer.
Right. Because technology is the foundation of every discipline in the business. There's EX tech, there's CX tech, there's tech to understand, communicate vision, there's tech around business models and strategy, there's tech everywhere in the business. There's no such thing as an information technology department anymore. There's just technology in every department of the business. And the point we're really trying to make here is this bucket of CX is all about the science of unpacking the customer journey. And the beautiful thing about life today is that we have so much data around that journey. We can understand the roadblocks and the steps and the triggers. So customer experience is the science of sales and marketing service and the tech that supports those disciplines. And it's about building teams in your organisation that aren't marketing teams or aren't service teams or aren't sales teams, but are customer experience teams, because you need to deploy skills of selling and deploy skills of marketing and deploy skills of service at all different points along that journey. And you can't just have one discipline, if I can say marketing or sales or service function in that. No, and that's why in today's organisations, certainly the organisations that win and that are growing, they think differently in this space.
Yeah, and this is why you're talking about the journey, because like maybe in the simplest terms, we think about like a win as the sale of a widget or a transaction that takes place, right?
That's right.
As opposed to a win might actually just be stepping the customer along the next step.
That's right.
In the process.
And that's, I mean, you go through any kind of 101 sales and marketing training and what all you're taught, and we shout this mantra all the time, all you've got to do is communicate or sell to the next step of the journey. That's all you've got to do. I jokingly always talk about this as the dating game. Nobody gets married on the first date. And if you do, it's generally not the wife.
You're on a sitcom.
That's right. It's genuinely not the type of person you want for life. You must learn and understand and get to know. There's a journey to go through. There's milestones. There's first date, second date. We'll stop there because we could just go totally off the rails. But the customer is in this constant state of enticement and journey, and so you've got to understand how do we bring awareness to them that we have a solution to their problem. How do they consider that? Are they already problem aware or not problem aware in the marketplace? What is it about our product or service that solves their problem, and how do we understand their discovery and consideration and buying journey? And what are the specific roadblocks along that journey, and how do we make it easy? And that ultimately unlocks new opportunities across the business. And businesses like Uber have looked at industries where people haven't done that for many, many years because the technology wasn't there or whatever, and gone, wow, we could remove so much pain in the taxi journey if we actually redesigned the customer experience. And if you do that, what does the rest of the business look like? And so customer experience is about saying that. How do we identify roadblocks? How do we remove those roadblocks? And how do we make that journey smoother and smoother to purchase and repurchase consistently? And so that's why the Waymaker leadership model is a continuous improvement model. The acquisition and retention process you have today might be good, you might be on the journey to great, but you've got to be continuously removing those roadblocks. And maturity comes when those processes, skills and systems are smooth to easily acquire through consistent repetitive systems and processes. I actually want to show a clip here. And it's actually nothing to do with business, but it's everything to do with identifying roadblocks in a journey.
Let's throw to it now.
Boris Becker, for an example, who beat me the first 3 times we played because his serve was something the game had never seen before. Well, I watched tape after tape of him and stood across the net from him 3 different times, and I started to realize he had this weird tick with his tongue. I'm not kidding. He would go into his rocking motion, his same routine, and just as he was about to toss the ball, he would stick his tongue out, and it would either be right in the middle of his lip or it would be to the left corner of his lip. So if he's serving in the deuce court and he put his tongue in the middle of his lip, he was either serving up the middle or to the body. But if he put it to the side, he was going to serve out wide. The hardest part wasn't returning his serve. The hardest part was not letting him know that I knew this. So I had to resist the temptation of reading his serve for the majority of the match and choose the moments when I was going to use that information on a given point. I told him at Oktoberfest, we went out in Oktoberfest in Germany and had a pint of beer together, and I couldn't help but say, by the way, did you know you used to do this and give away your serve? He about fell off the chair, and he says, I used to go home all the time and just tell my wife, it's like he reads my mind.
How good is Andre Agassi in that?
That's so good. And how good was the tongue?
I think I love the story, and I love the story. You just want to be the fly on the wall when Andre Agassi is telling Boris about how he worked out to return serve, and I think if you're listening, you've figured out the relationship here. Andre Agassi had a problem. I grew up watching Agassi play tennis and Boris play tennis, and they were heroes of our era, Generation X, I'm going to say, maybe YX. And I love the fact that Agassi stopped and he goes, I just can't beat his serve. Why can't I beat his serve? And the first thing he did was he identified the roadblock to winning against Boris. And so
which was to beat his serve.
Beat his serve, yeah. And that's actually half the problem. And we stress this so much in our growth framework. What's the problem to solve? What's the roadblock? The weekly discipline of coming together and identifying roadblocks against your goals. And so the first critical thing Agassi did was actually get clear on the roadblock. He goes, actually, that's my genuine roadblock. So what did he do? Lesson number 2, he stepped back and he goes, all right, I'm going to just watch hours and hours of my my competitor, my customer, my opponent serving. And so he did his research. And I think that's the genius of Agassi coming through. It's not just the brawn and the muscle and the physique on the court. He's the thinking mind, which leads to unlocking the problem because he suddenly identifies a tell, a trigger point, a data point. And all of our customers have those. There is something, and the process to identify it is observing and listening. And so he first of all, he identifies the roadblock. Secondly, he identifies the trigger point, the data point. Thirdly, he turns that insight into intellectual property.
Yeah.
He now has IP he can use on court to beat Boris. And that IP is turned into a practice, a thing he does. We'd call that a practice in our model, a part of your business model. It's something that you do as a part of your business model, your gameplay, that reinforces competitive advantage. And in doing that, he could now unlock the chance to get to the next step of the journey, which was returning serve. And ultimately, he knew that he could win on the return of serve more often than not. So this key unlocked the capacity to win. It was a really critical milestone. And so I
love that he actually says in that, he goes, I had to actually kind of let some go. Like, just so that it didn't look like I knew what he was doing. So he had to choose which points he wanted to win.
That's right. Isn't that an amazing...
That's a good position to be in.
Isn't it?
Oh, I better lose a couple.
Otherwise I'm going to give the game away.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's true in sales and marketing. I love sitting and talking to really good salespeople and marketers. I learn so much. And one of the things you learn is their innate ability to know when they're going to win that deal. And they know so early on in the process often because they've identified the trigger points and the characteristics of that ideal deal and they know they'll make it happen. And that infuriates often young marketers and managers because they're like, no, treat everybody the same and do everything the same. And the more experience you get, you quickly learn where should I invest time and where should I not invest time. These tells, these trigger points unlock those journey. Yeah, I just think that's an amazing story. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall listening to when he eventually told him and revealed it. No, and so if there's anything out of today's episode, it's that customer experience is the science of understanding those tells throughout the journey. And as you build up your playbook of tells, you design and deliver content and services to make it easy to respond to that tell. That is all this process is. And all we're doing is using the skills of sales and marketing and service and digital tech to effectively do that more often. And so the practical thing for teams is to forget about marketing departments or sales departments or service departments. You might have teams within teams, but to think about journey management and who owns what part of the journey and how do we use people and tech to manage that journey really well so that we understand how to get people through that journey. And the second thing, so the first is let's not think about departments, let's think about journey management. and who owns what stage of the journey and what tells us when handoff is.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly is the science of continuous improvement on that. What goals exist across that journey and how do we continuously improve on making that better? How do we think like Agassi, going, how do I unlock the serve? How do I unlock this serve for this type of customer? And when you think like that, every quarter you'll be focusing on improving each step of the journey.
I was going to say in this approach, it's probably easier to find that you have advocates before a transaction has actually even taken place. Here's my example.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I don't know, let's hypothetically say I'm talking to a real estate agent who's constantly been in conversation with me for like forever about the sale of a house.
Yes.
And because we've developed a rapport, because they've tracked me through that process, it's inevitable like that at some point we're going to sell our house through that agent.
Yes.
Because of the rapport. And so they've actually developed an advocate long before a transaction has taken place.
Yeah, and you're right. And this is probably a whole nother episode, but I'll do it in 30 seconds. We build trust by solving small problems on the journey to the big problem. And so when trust is built through the small things on the journey, when you're considering, okay, who will I list my home with, which agent? Already that agent, because they've solved small amounts of trust along the buying journey, by the time you're ready to make a decision, other people who may be better, who may have better outcomes, don't have the trust levels that have been built up. And so the value in the relationship isn't there. And so you're exactly right. So it does make you think differently about the journey steps. It does force you to go, what are my trigger points along the journey and how do I create value? So practically, you can jump into Waymaker Academy and you can download customer experience resources. Just search at waymaker.io. And most importantly, if you take the Waymaker diagnostic, look at your results on the diagnostic for CX sales, CX marketing, CX service. And it's one of the deepest, meatiest elements of the diagnostic. And you will find growth gaps, areas where in your business you need to build maturity and strength in order to lift that skill. And you'll get that in 15 to 20 minutes. So that's probably the most practical thing you could do coming out of this podcast.
Awesome. Waymaker.io for those that are looking for the URL. Stu, always a pleasure. Let's chat more about how to achieve more by doing less in the next episode.